are waiting in anticipation for the greylisting decision. After nearly 2 years of reform and review, South Africa stands on the verge of being delisted. A moment that could boost investor confidence has already been calculated into market trades, though, going ahead. So there we might not see a great difference, but it does signal a turn for our financial credibility. Our newsroom is also tracking the story, so I will know soon when the decision comes out. And then later on, we're going to have Old Mutual's John Manike, head of financial education, weighing in on the growing trend of gambling and pension withdrawals across the country. So an important conversation to have on the financial wellness of households across the country. Sally Sitole is on it for later on today, so stay with us here on Closing Bell. But starting off is the distinguished panel joining me on the implications of the Financial Action Task Force decision and what it means for South Africa's financial integrity and business environment. So I'd love to welcome our guests. First one is Danie Dörfling, Business Unit Lead at Governance at Moore Infinity. And then I've got Vincent Gaudel, Financial Crime Compliance Expert at LexisNexis Risk Solution, and Bastian Teichgreeber, Chief Investment Officer at Prescient Investment Management. It's been such a long week. I don't need these tongue twisters to challenge me, but I hope I did fairly well, so forgive me if I haven't. But now let's start off, and I think I want to start off with you, Danie, and just ask you, just give us a bit of an overview of the journey to date. You know, it started off quite a while back, right, with the delisting, with us being grey-listed. What has this journey been like?
Absolutely. I mean, if we look just at the 2021 mutual investigation, there was a movement of, I think, 20 of the requirements and the recommendations that we didn't fulfill. 8 of them materially not so. And we've been in a journey of trying to really become sufficiently and substantially better in those categories. And I think going at and looking and fast forwarding to this year in July, I mean, we're at a position where we substantially increased and improved on the 22 recommendations and the 11 effectiveness or effective immediate outcomes.
And I mean, this happened, and I'm just having a look at the numbers, actually. That's what I'm looking at. February 2023, everybody did say it wouldn't take us long, it would take us 2 years. So, and I was a bit skeptical, I must admit. So everybody's proven me wrong because you feel that we've really made strides in what we're trying to do. And perhaps I can ask you, Vincent, I mean, what are your thoughts on the journey as well? Do you feel that it has been a doable journey, that we've ticked all the boxes, confidence is there that we will actually be able to get out of this and be able to correct it and stay out of it even going forward? Vincent?
Yeah, it's an impressive journey, to be honest, because as you just said, I mean, there were quite a few deficiencies, quite a few issues to fix when the initial mutual evaluation came up. So half of the 40 recommendations were rated as partially or non-compliant. So that was a lot of work to fix on the technical side of things, and lots of laws to upgrade to meet the international standards from the FATF. So that has been done fairly rapidly by the South African competent authorities. And the second part of the equation was to demonstrate outcomes and outcomes on a range of action that were part of the action plan. And that, again, we saw successive improvements. The FATF acknowledged those progress. Plenary after plenary, we saw some of the items in the action plan being fixed. So it has been really a steady commitment by all stakeholders, and it was really positive to see all those progress made month after month by all involved stakeholders. So yeah, impressive journey, actually.
Thank you, Vincent. Bastian, I think the challenge is in the execution. I mean, if you have a look at what that means for visibility, for transparency, have you started to see it coming into the system and change how we do things?
Not sure if it comes into the system that quickly, but from our point of view, purely from an investment point of view, it's all about that journey which Vincent has already alluded to. It's about doing the right stuff, signaling to investors that South Africa is a country where we're trying to get things right, that we want to attract foreign capital. And that obviously is a long journey, but it starts to feed through into asset class returns, and it's only positive.
And I think, so a very good point there. So as much as we've gone through the measures of ticking off all the boxes, all 22 actions. It's still going to get into the system. So how do you see the progress being made to date now starting to translate into how we do things in South Africa?
I mean, there are a variety of ways, one of them being beneficial ownership. I mean, there's no annual returns if you don't have your beneficial ownership. Or you don't file your beneficial ownership. So that's one of the big or the major compliance burdens on SMEs, and that's definitely been reflected in the market. If we look at all of the FIC compliance requirements, AML, CFT, I mean, counter-terrorist financing, those are massive changes within the market, and the changes have brought sort of a friction tax to South Africans and everyday South Africans in remittances that have enhanced due diligence because of the fact that we were grey listed. And then obviously banks de-risking South Africa and international banks de-risking South Africa, choosing to rather invest in other countries because we share a grey list with countries like Yemen.
And I'm glad that you've touched on the part is around the banking systems and our financial systems. But one of the other key elements of this, and that's been a real contentious issue, is our judicial system. And Vincent, to what degree do you feel that really helped to strengthen our judicial system, and that we will start to see crimes of importance, be they economic or crimes or any other, that we will be much more serious about prosecuting them on time?
The way I look at it is that when you fix the regulations, you have the prerequisite is to have a set of rules, a set of requirements that allow you to have enough intelligence and the right mechanism to prosecute those criminals. So it all works. It's part of the same puzzle, right? But the rules are just a prerequisite to having effective outcomes. So it's not a guarantee, but you really have it's a prerequisite. So once you have the rules, you can leverage them to achieve better outcomes. So now that's actually what the FATF will be looking at going forward, is really to what extent are those rules and mechanisms being used to actually improve the overall integrity of South Africa's financial system. That's really key to watch.
Thank you for that input. It's insightful. Bastian, I want to ask you about the cost of all of this for investors, for the flow of money. Does it become more difficult? Does it become more costly? How does it start to impact how invest? Besides the fact that it gives us positive sentiment around investing in South Africa, but does it have other implications to investors?
The implications. I mean, for South Africa, it's all about foreign direct investments, right? So for many years now, we've seen outflows out of our country. Foreigners have just not had the confidence that the South African economy is worth to put their money into. So that's changing, hopefully now. It has started to change already along that journey which we've been on to get off that grey list. But it's all just one small piece of the puzzle. It's about creating confidence for investors. It's about creating an environment which is easy to invest in for foreigners, and that's what we have to create. But I think the pure signaling is massive, and it's very positive. Coming off the list reduces the regulatory burden. It just makes doing business easier. It compresses risk premium. So it's a quite positive thing. There's a lot of positives, not just one.
And I think for me as well, I think I wanted to reflect very much on political will. I don't know who was to lean in on that, and that's maybe you, Danie. Has political will played a very important role? And I mean, if it has, it's really a good thing. The agencies that came together with such speed and effectiveness. I was one of the skeptics. What's your view on political will to get things done?
I agree. I mean, the cooperation between the MPA, between the Hawks, between some of the South African prosecuting authorities has been excellent. And what we've seen is in those immediate effectiveness outcomes or immediate outcomes is the enhancement of prosecutions, is the enhancement of asset forfeiture or asset holding. I think if I'm correct, it was about 11 billion in assets that were actually seized, and I think 10 more that is still in holding. So that is a fantastic win for South Africa, 10 billion that is in holding. So I think that's a fantastic win for South Africa, and it definitely leans on political commitment for this to work. And I think FATF actually looks at that and looks at the political commitment, because that obviously changes how effectively we prosecute and how effectively we institute these statutes.
So this could be really good for us on so many fronts. It probably is the beginning of a momentum that I'm sure will continue, because we are moving into a next round in about 2 years. There's 2027. In 2 more years, we're moving into another round. Vincent, what are we needing to do to prepare for that evaluation? Surely, I'm sure it's maintenance of where we are at now, but the bar will probably not be the same. We will still need to do better.
No, exactly. I mean, today will hopefully be a day to celebrate all all the efforts that has been done. It will be really good to enjoy that day. But yeah, the challenge going forward is really to sustain those efforts and to continue achieving those outcomes that the other panelists talked about. I think, as you pointed out, like the greylisting decision was great in a sense because it resonated as a wake-up call for everybody in the country. And yeah, it brought momentum, and now it's all about maintaining momentum and continuing to achieve those immediate outcomes that the FATF will be looking at. For the next evaluations cycle, it will be even more focused on those immediate outcomes. So yeah, we should definitely sustain that focus on achieving results against financial crime.
Sure. As such, running a country is no small job at all. I mean, you celebrate, but then immediately on to what will be measured in 2 years, and 2 years is short. But if we're up to it now, we should be up to it going forward. I think what I want to also lean into, Bastian, when it comes to the financial markets, is that they're changing rapidly. They're becoming more sophisticated. We are looking at a whole lot more AI interventions or crimes and cybersecurity crimes. But then we're also looking at financial systems of investing also just evolving. Do you think that there's more sophistication that needs to go into the markets in how we manage investor funds?
Certainly, there's ever more data becoming available and investing becomes ever more complex, right? So that's a reality. But luckily, we also have ever more comprehensive tools to deal with that. So back in the days, I always like to say investing was pretty easy. Everything was like less data, easy to understand, more straightforward. Things are becoming ever more comprehensive. But yeah, I think you have to embrace it. You have to embrace the future. Use those tools which you just mentioned, AI, machine learning, natural language processing. Use them to help you and guide you when making investment decisions, and celebrate the fact that ever more data becomes available. There's ever more transparency, new tools to track that data. So we have to all keep on learning and keep on improving. But that's something which I'm excited about and not something which makes me fearful.
Well, definitely. I mean, technology is interesting. Adapting to it is fantastic. And there's much to think about from a South African perspective when it comes to the opportunities that this probably brings to us at this time. Because now we join a couple of peers who've gone out of delisting. And yesterday I was having a conversation with Invest in Mauritius team and how they repositioning their environment as, again, pushing to be the gateway, pushing for investment into their country. What is the opportunity that exists for us as South Africa from a recovery, but also a positioning point of view?
I also think Bastian made a good point. He said portfolio inflows, in accordance with the IMF, is about 7.5% reduction in inflows. So that just in terms of capital inflow, in terms of FDI and portfolio flows, which is about 2.9% in portfolio flows, makes a big difference in the South African economy. There's a poll that suggests that 60,000 jobs were lost due to greylisting. So that means the suggestion that we could potentially grow that back, that we can grow our markets, that our cross-border remittances are easy. I mean, we're sitting with one of the most expensive cross-border remittance systems in the world. And if you now reduce that by 4 percentage points, that makes it much more sustainable for South Africans. And that makes the living tax that we're experiencing and that friction tax a little bit lighter on the rest of South Africa.
And 60,000 jobs we can't afford to lose.
Exactly.
We just cannot afford to lose them. But I think, again, I go back to the question of sustainability and the continuous collaboration and bringing on all the partners that play a role. And Vincent, have there been additional bodies established to continue this work, or bodies that are currently existing having new platforms to continue to collaborate and to maintain and sustain some of the regulatory and governance and crime related problems we faced?
So there are some regional groups that help other African nations to upgrade their regulatory framework. So it will be very important and I think beneficial for South Africa that they share their experience and the type of best practice that they have put into work to exit the grey list. But yeah, there is a need to continue having more cooperation for better addressing illicit activities. Obviously, not only at the rules level, but also cooperation among police forces, and also just for industries to upgrade those best practices.
And I think one of the key things that we would need to see, and maybe I'm making an assumption, Bastian, but there are definitely things that plague investors, like asset recovery, looking at some of these new virtual assets that are being established. As you said, it's becoming a little bit more complex. What are you seeing us needing to pay attention to as soon as possible for investors from a South African environment?
You have to be smart about things. If you look at other countries like Dubai, for example, they're very future fit, very future forward, and countries like that attract a lot of capital. So when it comes to new financial instruments, as you mentioned, like for example cryptocurrencies, etc., you need to be on the forefront, right? Your regulation can't ignore these. Your regulation needs to be smart about these, because if you don't regulate them properly, it gets out of hand and they get used in the wrong way, and they will be used for maybe money laundering or taking money offshore illegally. So with that, be on the front foot as a regulator. Accept that the future will be challenging, accept there's new instruments coming, and build a regulatory framework which can cater for that in time, and don't be reactive but be proactive.
And I'm tempted to ask you your thoughts on how well we're doing on that, on embracing and being a part of and legislating for these tools. I'm a little, I don't know much as you, but when it comes to cryptocurrency and all of that, are we moving at a pace that to you seems like it's on par with our peers or the global trend?
That poorly. I mean, we have, if you look at the South African Reserve Bank, they are helping a lot. There is working groups which try to get the story right. Are we as future forward, like maybe as a Dubai or other countries? Well, there's always somebody smarter, there's always somebody better, and somebody acting faster. But I don't think we have to say that South Africa is far behind the curve here. I really don't see it like that. I think we are doing the right stuff. It is moving in the right direction. There's more homework to be done, that's for sure. But I think we're on the right track here as well.
And thank you for that, for leaning into that. Danie, I wanted to talk about the 2 years that's going to come now. Do you have a view of what is going to be different about the evaluation process we're going to undergo?
I don't think there's going to be material difference. It's just going to be much closer scrutinized when it comes to the actual evaluation. I think what was mentioned previously by one of the other panelists is we now have set up the regulatory frameworks. We've showed that we have accomplished immediate actions in the short term. Can we sustain that in the long run? That is the question, and that I'm a bit cautious to answer. I think there's a real risk of South Africa potentially slipping at their compliance, because we've built this compliance muscle in the last 2.5 years, something that is a feat that we really need to be proud of. I mean, Mauritius has done it in 18 months, but we did it in 2.5 years. And it typically takes countries 2 to 4 years to do that, 4 to 6 even. So I think there aren't material changes in the evaluation, but there are going to be material scrutiny or enhanced material scrutiny on how well we did in those immediate outcomes.
And that's, I think, the detail that I wanted to lean into. And Vincent, I think you're well positioned to talk about, it's not just going to be about the fact that we have the compliance measures. Which ones would be of concern to you that we need to strengthen our effectiveness in implementing those particular areas of change?
So I think that there is one area that is not unique to South Africa, actually, but that will be closely looked at in the next cycle of evaluation globally by the FATF. And that's the level of the preventative measures that is implemented by entities other than the large financial institutions. So to an extent, what you see in many countries is that the international financial institutions are mature on those controls. They have a set of processes and tools that enable them to prevent, detect, and report criminal activities. But when you look at smaller financial institutions and non-financial professions that do have an exposure to those risks, the maturity is not at the same level, and there is still an effort to really educate them and also supervise them to make sure that they implement measures commensurate to their risks. So that's something that was made clear by the FATF, is that those non-financial gatekeepers, and here I'm talking about legal professions, the gambling sector, dealers in precious metals and stone, that kind of professions will be looked at more closely going forward. So yeah, if South Africa wants to get ahead of the curve, it's also important that these are made part of the equation as well.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And I actually want to ask you as well, Bastian, to lean in on that, to lean in on the private sector. What role do you think that they can continue to play for us to strengthen measures and stay out of greylisting going forward?
Hopefully a big role, right? I mean, we've seen it so many times in this country that the private sector can make massive impacts once it is free and able to make those contributions. We've seen it during the recent electricity crisis. We've seen it during water crisis. We've seen it in so many instances. So most definitely, I think the role the private sector here has to play is big. I think the interest the private sector has is also big. So they will naturally do that as long as the private sector is enabled to do that. So I think generally you get the best outcomes when you enable the private sector through a proactive government and yeah, let things play out in that way. That's normally best.
And quickly, Danie, from your perspective, more or less the same thing as what Bastian has touched on, the role of private sector. How big was it? How strong was it in getting us to where we are?
I think it is a massive impact, but again, hats off to the MPA, hats off to the Hawks, hats off to the prosecuting authorities in South Africa for getting us to where we are in terms of immediate effectiveness outcomes. I think we, as a professional services firm and professional services firm like More Infinity, play a massive role in the declaration of beneficial ownership for small businesses who don't even know they're not compliant. And so I think private sector plays a massive role in getting us to where we need to be. We now need to use that beneficial ownership data to obviously try and prosecute and to move towards immediate effectiveness. But it's a balancing act, right? It's a game of really getting businesses compliant and getting people to the forefront of compliance worldwide. And recommendation 16, which will come into effect in 2030 about the traceability of cross-border remittances, it's going to be a massive impact on South Africa and our potential going forward. So that to me is just a show of our compliance muscle.
And a last one quickly, do we have a job to do to further engage the international community and build trust? Or are we just happy to get the results and then get back to work again for 2027?
No, we definitely need to engage the international markets, international banks. FDI inflow is so cardinal to South African growth. If we lose 7.6% of our GDP by the IMF stats, that swing needs to happen in the next coming years, not in the short run, maybe in the next 5 years, but that again creates jobs, it creates sustainable South African businesses, and that is what we're actually looking at.
And Bastian, the work that needs to get done to improve sentiment, you believe we still have a way to go. How do we go about showing the world that we're actually on the right track? Because sometimes, we get lost in news and this gets forgotten. How do we use it effectively?
Yeah, 100%. I think it was a good right step, and I think Vincent said it earlier. The signaling is massive, and that's great, right? So we are showing the world that we are a country which cares about our investability, and that's absolutely a great outcome. So in terms of confidence, this should give us a boost, but to the point made earlier, it doesn't mean that we can now rest. There's a lot which still needs to happen. There's a lot of structural reforms which we need to push through ASAP. We've got a very high unemployment rate, which we need to tackle. We've got an aging infrastructure. That's a good area also to get the private sector more aggressively involved. So lots of homework still to do for us, but I think let's focus on that tomorrow. Today is a day for celebration because it's all good news that we finally got off this dreaded list.
Oh, fantastic. And you got to break the news on CNBC Africa. Thank you so much. We really were we were on tenterhooks waiting for it. knowing full well and having a lot of confidence in the work that's been done. And maybe to close us off, Vincent, the news is out. We are off the grey list. It's been a lot of work. What are the plans? What's in the pipeline? And how do we just ensure proper recovery of economic activity?
I guess you continue the good work. I mean, you guys have shown, I mean, the country as a whole has shown its ability and its willingness to address these important topics. So yeah, just keep doing that. Don't lose that great momentum, because it's really, I mean, it's good for the reputation internationally of the country, but it's also good for the trusts, like the trusts of South Africans in their financial system. And I mean, the financial system is the backbone of the economy. So yeah, it will be a very positive sign for the economy as a whole. And so you have to continue to nurture that and to make that bear results for the country.
Yeah, absolutely. We all need a screenshot of that tagline. I think it's going to be it's a huge and beautiful. You and I might have it if somebody takes a screenshot of us while we're on screen. But your parting shots around, I think there's a lot that South Africa is dealing with internally, and there's a lot that we're dealing with externally. Geopolitics are really impacting every single citizen in this country. Your hope for South Africa, you believe that we have the leadership and the muscle to improve things going forward?
Absolutely. And I think we've got so much to do, as Bastian mentioned, in terms of the fading infrastructure. Private sector can do so much for fading infrastructure. Private sector can do so much for the energy crisis in South Africa. And I think we can really build on and grow from this, attracting investment, attracting global opportunities. And I'm so grateful to every South African and to all of the authorities that made this possible.
And you know, there are a few things in the year that just really give us confidence in South Africa and give us hope for the future, and this has definitely been one of them. And again, I think credit has been given to those who've been part of this journey, and thank you so much to my guests for joining me on this conversation. And that was Danie Dörfling, Business Unit Lead for Governance at Moore Infinity. And I also had Vincent Gaudel, Financial Crime Compliance Expert at LexisNexis Risk Solutions, as well as Bastian Teichgreeber, the CIO of Prescient Investment Management.